welcome to the third episode of Down to Heal. If you are returning, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. If you're here for the first time, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This episode, we're going to talk about how to remain optimistic in a time of great apathy and the importance of human connection. I'm really excited for this episode. It's something that I'm really passionate about. I think that being optimistic is one of the most important things. Of course, not remaining that in all times is necessary or makes sense, but it can really, really help change your mindset. It can really help just change a lot of situations. And human connection, one of the most important things I believe that you can honestly have in life. So we're going to get into that, talk about my experience, and talk about, some tips and tricks of how to remain optimistic. So that being said, let's get started. So to get started, I will just kind of start my little backstory from childhood and why I decided to be optimistic in the first place and what really pushed me to take that path. So as a child, I had a really tumultuous childhood, I would say. A lot of chaos. There were a lot of negative things happening. Parents separated. My parents have never been married, but they were, at that time, we were going on transition from moving to Illinois to where I am now, Arizona. So that happened, and my mother left that abusive relationship, came here. So we really just kind of uprooted our lives. That was kind of my earliest memories, just being uprooted. And then after that, just really trying to find our footing here in a state that we didn't know. We had very few family members, so it was a lot to deal with, especially as a child, going through that, not really understanding things, not understanding why we're struggling or why we can't have certain things, I guess I would say I understood why, but it was more of like not really understanding fully the gravity of the situation, not really understanding what's going on fully because I was so young, So a lot of chaos, a lot of moving, a lot of transitioning, dealing with my own personal issues. I've experienced some sexual abuse in my childhood, so that was also happening, and just, so many things that were negative that it really was overwhelming. I found myself, as a child, one of my youngest memories was feeling overwhelmed, just really feeling like, how am I going to dig myself out of this hole? Like just a black hole of negativity, really. How am I going to dig myself out of this? How am I going to get out of this? Because it wasn't fun for me. It wasn't enjoyable. I just really didn't want to feel so sad. I didn't want to feel so negative. And a lot of times I think that my positivity really helped me get through a lot of things. So the reason I made that decision to become optimistic or to be more optimistic was because I was so tired of drowning, and I was so tired of feeling the weight of everything negative happening to me. It was just a lot. It was overwhelming, especially as a small child. It can be extremely overwhelming. So for me, I really chose to be optimistic. I chose that path because I just figured this could at least help, at least it's something. At least I'm doing something to make myself feel better, even if I don't really 100% believe what I'm saying to other people or saying to myself. I felt like if I'm really saying it, if I'm really trying, then maybe I can start to believe it. Maybe positive things will start happening to me. So that's kind of why I started this journey of becoming an optimist, because it was really a hard time for me as a child, and I really didn't see any other way out of it. And I think that it can be really hard for people to become optimistic because they really don't see there being a positive. They don't want to be disappointed if something doesn't go their way, if they believe in something good and it goes poorly. And I understand that completely. It can be really frustrating to believe in something. Finally, let's say that you've been a negative person your entire life, and finally you say, you know what, let me get my hopes up a little bit. Let me believe in this situation. It's really frustrating when it doesn't work out. It can be really, really disappointing. And, that can lead you to believe that being optimistic just isn't the way to go. It just doesn't make sense, and there's no reason to be positive. But I think, honestly, the more that you are positive, the more that you're optimistic, the more good things are going to happen for you. And I know that that seems kind of crazy to say, and maybe if you've experienced that and you've said, you're saying to yourself right now, no, that's not true, because I've been optimistic and, bad things still happen to me. Of course, bad things are still going to happen, even if you are an optimist. I'm not saying that in the slightest. What I'm saying is I think that the more you put out there in the universe, the more energy, the good energy you put out, the more you're going to get back. And that's really honestly what I think it is. So I was the same way, I was really negative. I found myself being negative a lot more than positive for a large portion of my life until I made that decision. I would say, I remember very clearly making that decision that I wasn't going to be that way anymore. I think I was about 11 or 12. I remember just feeling like, no, I don't want to be this way. And making that decision to actively be positive against all odds, I think that is the most important thing you can do, because at least you're putting good energy out. At least you're not contributing to the negative energy, than the bad things, at least you're contributing to the good things. And I think that in this time that we're in, 2022, everything that's happened to people, losing their jobs because of the pandemic, getting sick, losing family members due to the pandemic, losing, your home, being in debt, having poor credit, just losing everything that we worked so hard for over the past few years. I think that for everyone, it's been this kind of collective, giving up sort of vibe, I think that it's just collectively we've all resorted to just being very apathetic and very pessimistic. And I don't think that it's purposeful by any means, but I think that when you experience so many negative things, like I did as a child, when you experience so many negative things back to back to back, it can be really easy to be negative. It can be really easy to feed into that, because I will say it is really hard to be positive, especially when you're staring in the face of so many hurdles. It can be extremely hard. And I'm not saying it's an easy path, because it isn't by any means. But I think that it is so much better to be positive than be negative. I think that in the long run, it's more work to be negative. But it is difficult with these times that we're in now, where so many things have happened, and we live in a world where, if you are in the United States like myself, we live in a world where our government really doesn't care about us. And so that's kind of it really does show in the way that people treat each other now. I mean, I'm sure that if you're like me and you're pretty observant as to how things have changed the past few years, you can also see that people have become extremely apathetic. And it's really hard, going out in public isn't the same it used to be. There aren't as many smiling faces. There aren't as many friendly people. There aren't as many people that have manners. There aren't as many people willing to help each other. I think right now we're in a very fend for yourself sort of situation, because everyone's struggling. I don't think that there's any of us that are excluded from it. Even if you're doing well, it's just, you still go out, you still experience people, and you still can just sense that energy, that just very heavy energy. And I think that's due to a lot of what we've experienced as a society the past few years. And I think it's so hard to get out of it, especially when we are as a collective in this apathetic state. So one of the reasons I wanted to have this kind of conversation or talk about this topic is because I'm noticing that as we are getting into this state of apathy, we're also losing parts of ourselves. We're not valuing kindness as much. We're not valuing being genuine as much. We're just so focused on the negative because we're surrounded by the negative. And I think that it's so important, especially in the time that we're in now, that we really, really hold each other close, and we really, really spend time with each other and love each other and be kind to each other, because I think all we need is a little empathy. We need a little bit of empathy from each other, and that can really, really change how things are going for us. And maybe, I'm not saying we can change the way that the government is or the world is in one day, not even a few months, really. It will take time, but that's what it is. Becoming an optimist from being a pessimist is going to take time. It's all just habit. Once you build the habit, it just becomes, it becomes an everyday thing. You don't have to think about it so much. I think that we need to incorporate being empathetic into our habits and really, really be there for each other, because it is such a hard time that we're in. I was also one of those people that I lost my job due to the pandemic. So it was really difficult for me to go through that as well. I was struggling trying to make ends meet. And luckily I have family members, my mom helped me get through that. But if I didn't, I would be like everyone else. I would be homeless, or I would be, struggling to eat. And I went through that too, and it was rough. I mean, it still is rough for those of you struggling with housing or food, basic necessities. It still is rough. And I think what can really help you get out of it, and what can really just help lighten your load a little bit, is having a positive mindset, right? So it doesn't have to be like, oh, things are great and everything's fine. And, that's not what it is. Like, we're not going to candy coat it. It's not about candy coating. It's more about, I'm going through this situation that's negative or that's detrimental to me. How do I get out of this? Where do I want to be? Like, from my perspective, what I've done to help myself is, when I'm having those moments where I'm thinking, I have severe anxiety. So a lot of times my mind is racing, and my mind's not always racing with great thoughts. A lot of times it's negative thoughts. It's worrisome thoughts. So when I'm having those anxious thoughts where I'm just thinking negative things back to back to back, I find myself kind of sitting in that moment, in that thought, and saying to myself, what do I want things to be like for me? Where do I want to be? Do I want to be in this current state of mind? Do I want to be in this current situation? And the answer is obviously no. If you wanted to be in that situation, you would have always been in a negative situation. So the answer is always going to be no. Do you want to be there in the future? Obviously not. So really ask yourself, what do you want? And if you don't want to be there, if you don't want to be in that situation, say to yourself, okay, what can change in the next 6 months for me? And you may not have the answer right away. It might take time to think about it. You could say to yourself, well, I can't guarantee I'm going to get a job or I'm going to get housing. But you can say to yourself, I know that I will be in a better place. You can make it something as general as that. I know that I'm going to be in a better place. And that's what I really did when I was having those moments, just anxious thoughts. I would say to myself, you can't always say 100%, I'm going to be having this or I'm going to do this. You can't say that. And sometimes you can, just because you believe in yourself. But a lot of times, a lot of people don't. Like, I didn't believe in myself. So I couldn't 100% say and believe it that I would have a job or I would have money or financial stability. But I could 100% say I'm not going to be in this situation in 6 months because I didn't want to be. And that's, I think, where it starts, the positivity, the optimism, just baby steps. It doesn't have to be an everyday thing like, this is great, I'm going through a great time, or I'm having a great day, because sometimes I'm even having a shitty day, or I'm having a shitty time in life, or I'm struggling financially or mentally or physically. And I don't always say to myself, like, things are great, everything's great, because it's just not true, right? You can't lie to yourself. You want to be honest. So what I usually do is I just say, what do I want things to be? Where do I want to be? And that can really, really take me out of that negative mindset and put me into a positive one, simply by just asking myself those questions. And a lot of times I do that every single day. So like I said before, it's a habit. It has to be a habit, because if you don't make it a habit, you're not going to be able to be optimistic. You're going to remain in that pessimistic space. So make it a habit for yourself. Really ask yourself these questions, right? Stop yourself when you're having these negative thoughts and think to yourself, where do I want to be? Who do I want to be? What do I want to do? Am I happy? Am I happy with this situation, that situation, whatever it is? Just really stop yourself and think about it, and that can kind of help you take those baby steps. I think for me, optimism was a necessity. And I find that a lot of people that I meet that are also optimists have told me that they've started being that way out of necessity, because I think it may take you getting as overwhelmed as I got for you to get to that point. So a lot of people aren't naturally optimistic. They're more pessimistic, so it can take a lot of work to get out of that. And sometimes it takes being at your rock bottom to really be like, all right, what's the other option? For me, it was out of necessity. It really was. Like I said before, I was just going through all that negative life changes, those negative life changes, and some of them positive, not all bad, but being a child, growing up, going through puberty, it was really difficult to kind of understand what was happening to me and really process that, and also deal with everyday teenage life, preteen life. So it was a necessity for me. And, it's really, really funny because there's a movie that just came out recently called Everything Everywhere All at Once, an absolutely brilliant film, beautiful film. It's a little bit strange, funny at times, a little weird. It's more of like an artsy film, but it's by no means simple. It's extremely brilliant. It's about remaining optimistic and, going through everyday life. And, there's this wife that's negative and her husband is really positive. And I found that he resonated with me, and also she did. I felt like I was this negative wife before going through this transition to become the positive husband. And one of the scenes in this movie, you have to go watch it, so I'm not going to go too into depth, but I will talk about this scene because it really hit me to the core, really resonated with me. But her husband, his name is Waymond, she's really telling him, I don't want to be positive. I don't want to be positive. I want to stay in this negative world. That's not verbatim, but essentially that's kind of the premise. But he's telling her, when I choose to see the good side of things, I'm not being naive. It is necessary. It's how I learned to survive through everything. And I found that so incredibly powerful, because that's exactly how I felt it was for me. And I feel like oftentimes when I am very positive or optimistic about things, people often see it as a weakness or as I'm being naive, and I'm not, and you're not by being optimistic. It's not naivety. It's really how people fight. Like, this is how I fight, like he says in the movie, he says that this is how I fight, through optimism, through this positive affirmation, through this love, through kindness. And that's really what it was for me. It was me fighting the negative things that had happened to me in my life or were happening to me through positivity. It wasn't just me being annoying and being that positive person, like happy-go-lucky. It was really how I fought those negative things. And that was so powerful to me in that moment. And when he said that, I just instantly started crying, because that truly resonated with me. So please go see the movie. It's called Everything Everywhere All at Once. Waymond is the positive guy that I'm talking about and I'm quoting. Beautiful, beautiful film. But anyway, so that's really, that's really true. It is really true. It doesn't have to be this change in who you are. You don't have to be that happy-go-lucky person. But if that's how you fight those terrible times, if that's how you fight, do it. Use that, use that optimism as a way to fight your battles, because it can really, really help you push through. For me, it was the saving grace. I don't think I would have made it through a lot of situations had I not been positive. And still to this day, I have several friends that aren't, very optimistic, especially with the world the way it is now and how everyone's treating each other. It can be so difficult to even understand positivity. And especially, for some of my friends that are in that boat, when I'm positive, it pisses them off. It might piss you off because you're like, things aren't going my way. Things aren't going to go my way. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want you to say something positive to me. Like 6 months down the line, things will be different. I don't want to hear it. And I totally get that. But it can really help you. It can really support you and motivate you to be positive. And really, honestly, in my opinion, I think that when you are putting out negative energy or surrounding yourself with it, that's kind of what your energy becomes. That's kind of, my belief. A lot of people have different beliefs about that and what they think energy is, if it's even a thing. I fully believe that it is. I fully believe that when you tend to be around people that are negative, oftentimes they can kind of influence your energy or completely change it. So the way that I believe is I think that all energy is recycled, and I think that when you are consistently around someone, giving them your energy, right, they're kind of recycling it from you into themselves, out of themselves into you. And if that person is negative, I feel like being around them and them sucking your energy out and that kind of recycling that's going on can end up changing your energy and kind of lowering your vibration. And I know that, some of you listening to this, those of you that don't believe that, totally fine, I get it, but that's kind of what my mind thinks of when I think of the negative energy and kind of changing that or people influencing you. So I really do believe that it can be really detrimental to be around people that are extremely negative all the time, because that can change your energy. And I think one of the biggest things you have to do, especially in this time, is protect your energy, protect everything that is yours, sacred, right? Like anything, your energy, your love, your kindness, protect that, because it's so important. It's priceless. So I think it's so important that you continue to be around people that are positive, also influence these people. And I'm not saying to drop anybody that's negative and says something negative. That's not what I'm saying by any means. But just kind of see who you're surrounded with. Are these people recycling your positive energy and making it into negative energy? That's kind of a way to think about it, because I know I've had quite a few people that I've had relationships, platonic and romantic, in my past few years, that they were really sucking my energy out of me. They were really taking my positive energy and turning it into negative energy. And when I was around them, I felt that weight, that just extreme weight on me from them. And I think that if you're somebody that's really struggling with being optimistic right now and you're really going through a hard time, I think it's so important that you really, really protect your energy. Just don't spend time on people that don't care about you, that don't influence you positively, that aren't there to benefit you and your life and bring value to your life and treat you the way you're supposed to be treated, because it's all an energy suck, so just be really careful about that. If you are somebody that's going through a hard time and struggling and a little pessimistic and you're trying to be optimistic, be really careful about where you place your energy. But I think that it's so important that if you are going through a hard time, that you fight it. You fight what's going on as much as you can, because there's some things you can't change, right? You can't get a job right away. You can't get housing right away. You can't just make sure you secure food for the next few months. Those things are harder, but I'm more talking about, just things you can do, like not talking to people that don't serve you, not doing things that aren't good for you. If you're struggling with addiction, it might be time for you to kind of get out of that and really go into treatment, or really to address why you're having this addiction. It might be time to seek counseling, seek therapy. Use this time of great apathy to really benefit yourself, because I think the only way we're going to be able to get out of this time that we're in is if we all come together collectively and be more empathetic, be more kind, be genuine, really form relationships based on who we want around us and who we want to be, not because they're materialistic based relationships or because that person gives you what you want. I think it's a time that we all need to sit down and really think to ourselves, is this the world that I want to live in? And I think a lot of us will say no. So I think that in this time where there's so many hurdles, it could be a really great opportunity for you to become an optimist, and that could really help you get through a lot of those mental blocks or those mental struggles. There's a quote by Malcolm X that I really, really love. It says, "There is no better than adversity. Every defeat, every heartbreak, every loss, its own seed, its own lesson on how to improve your performance the next time." That's so powerful. In the face of adversity, every one of those hurdles, every single one of them, it may seem like something you can't get over. It may seem like something you cannot surpass, but every single one of them is going to improve you. It's going to improve how you perform. It's going to improve your outlook. It's going to improve your mentality. So don't give up. Don't think that everything is negative. Nothing good is going to happen. Don't think that at all. So there's a way. Just maybe it's going to have to be a way that you don't think it's going to be. Maybe it's through optimism that you can get through these hurdles. So on our next part 2 of the episode, the same episode but part 2, which will be released next week, we'll talk about the importance of human connection and how I really, really think that it's so important that we come together, because I really want to dive a little bit deeper into that, but I want to kind of separate that from this episode. So I really hope that you join me for the next episode. I really, really hope that you enjoyed this one. And if you have any comments or any, concerns, or if you're just looking to vent, please reach out to me. I have no problem listening to any sort of concerns, any sort of venting. Please reach out to me. I'm here for you. So thank you again for coming with me on this journey. Thank you again for listening to me. And I really hope that you're going to join me for next week, the importance of human connection. Thank you so much.